medieval tile, floor tile.
Oh, he's nicked this from somewhere.
That I found being kicked about, but I'm not telling you where I found it.
Tinton Abbey.
Nope.
Tally Abbey.
Nope.
Oh well, you want to tell us, right? Just bloody tell us.
Ystrad Flir.
Oh, Ystrad Flir.
Strata, Florida.
Strata, Florida.
Right.
It could be worse.
No, it was on the floor, being kicked about.
Yeah.
And I thought,
You'll have it.
I'm not leaving that there because I can preserve it and keep it and then take it back one day. When I did have this thought about actually taking it, bringing it back stone by stone and build it in my garden.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that be acceptable?
Oh, I don't know. No, but one day I will be taking it back. But it was being kicked about. In fact, thrown by some kids.
Yeah.
So I decided, because it's sacred ground, I'm not leaving it there to be abused. So I rescued it. But it will be going back.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Michelle and I we went to Tally Abbey.
Yes.
Did I show you that time there was a bit of human cranium?
Oh yes, you said about that.
Which is actually on my desk here somewhere. Yes, that shouldn't have been lying around either.
No.
So yeah, that was very, very strange.
Yeah, but I saw it and I thought, oh, I saw that bit. I thought, oh, that's it.
You're gonna have that. Cool. On that note, we are going to get started. Thanks for sharing that with us, Del. But Michelle phoned me earlier on, really upset and livid about.
You didn't come home for dinner.
No, she's really upset that she wants to move from Wales now back to Orkney because she's really upset that we're going to have all these people from Afghanistan being settled in Wales.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's absolutely livid.
Let's not go that way, otherwise we'll
it's up to us to teach
use up
them to become tidy Welsh citizens.
Right. Anyway, right, today we're going to be looking at three things, right? Bill, I'm not going to ask you to write it down because you'll lose a bit of paper, right?
No.
So one, we're going to be looking at Emperor Karl-james II, which is like a weird little anomaly I want us to look at. And then we'll be going to look at Emperor Valerian. So that'll be a rather interesting one. And will be the Valerian plant. So that's sort of part 2 of whatever. And then we'll be looking at the site of Lubilius, which is in Morocco in North Africa, which is another Roman site. So we'll be looking at those three things. Actually 4. So if we start sharing on the screen now, this is a coin associated with the Emperor Karl-james II. Now, I just thought that I was wandering around last week and in my thoughts, and I mentioned Karl-james I and Electus. Right now, what happened? Back in the old worldly days of the year 286, 287 years AD, me and Richard remember it well. We were out there saving archaeological sites from the Bronze Age back then, me and Richard. But for a period between then and roughly around 296, Britain was its own empire for a very short period of time. So sort of. And it was independent, and we had our own Roman emperor, and there was Karl-james and Electus. But Karl-james was assassinated by his finance minister, And then you had a re-invasion of Britain by the official Roman emperor, and everything changed and altered, and that's it. So that's another talk in itself. Now, years later, 60 odd years later, another guy proclaimed himself Emperor of Britain, right? Roman Emperor of Britain. Make sure you use that word, Roman Emperor of Britain. And this is one of his very, very rare coins. And this very, very rare coin is a coin from Carausius II. It looks very, very crude. It's of British manufacture. And this is probably one of the only images that we got of Carausius II. It's very likely that Carausius II stylized himself on Carausius I, and maybe copied some of his coins, but that's really unlikely because these coins are really, really distinctive. So this is one of those coins that if you're a Roman coin collector, it would be a prized find. So what we know, he was a usurper Roman emperor. He reigned on his own bat, right? As a sort of Roman, and he wanted to be emperor of Britain, and we know he existed about 60 odd years later after the death of Carausius I, between 354 and 358. And we know of his existence from basically the coins that were produced. Strangely, weirdly, these coins with the name Carausius started to appear, all dating to 354 and 358. So we know that he did exist. And we see coins associated with this individual. We know that they're not coins from the original emperor 60 odd years earlier. They're coins that are deliberately associated with this bloke. Now, we can say that in the 350s, Britain was a very dangerous place. And what did we do last week? We did something called the Great Conspiracy last week, when things went to absolute crap. Right, we described last week that basically, if we go with 358, 9 years later, Britain's invaded by the Angles, the Franks, the Saxons, the Hibernians, the Irish, the Scoti, the people from other people from Scandinavia, and the Picts. Everything happens. The Roman soldiers fighting amongst themselves. There's looting and pillaging. But within a year, Britain's back within its own part of the Roman Empire. So this guy Carausius II, so just wanted to mention him, right? Just wanted to put him out there as a name that is a little bit of information. Now, the coin that we've got in front of us basically says Dominio Concio, which basically means which basically refers to Carausius, Carausius II. And interestingly enough, so the front part of the coin is called the obverse, and the back side of the coin is called the reverse. So on the reverse, you've got this, on the reverse, you've got Constantius, as reference to the actual Roman emperor himself, the real Roman emperor in Rome, right? Constantius, and basically you can actually see that he's produced this coin to honor the actual Roman emperor himself, the real Roman emperor, because Carausius II is a usurper emperor. He reckons he can reign and basically say, oh, you know, Roman in Rome, right? Emperor in Rome, Constantius II. I'm doing my bit here, right? I'm Carausius II, and you know, I'm looking after Britain for you, right? Constantius II didn't like this idea, right? So it's probably led to Carausius II being captured and put to the stake. So what you can see, interestingly, on the obverse of the coin is a warrior standing above a fallen horseman on his horse, spearing the horseman. And this is basically this is one of 20 known coins like this that are associated with Carausius II, this particular type. We do know of lots of other hoards associated with Carausius II. There is no other historical evidence about this guy. There's nothing else. This is all we've got. This is what we've got. We've got these coins. So the information about this guy is very incomplete. And there's no detail in Aminius Marcellinus's work that also writes about the Great Conspiracy. So does this guy have any legitimacy? Who is he? What's going on? And it's thought that the representation on the back associated with Constantius the second is basically saying, as I said, I'm Carausius II of Britain. I've got a sense of fealty towards the real Roman Empire. Let me reign over Britain and see if I can do a good job. Again, everything ended, and this individual is forgotten in history. Now, interesting enough, what we do have, right? If I may go and run and get it a minute, there's another point I want to make here. Hang on. Where are we? Where's my beautiful book? Where's my book? There it is. Excellent. See, we haven't got my wonderful Emperors of Roman and Byzantine coin book out recently, have we? Produced by David Arcia. Now, one interesting point is if you flick through the pages of these 121 emperors that ruled over Rome from the reign of Emperor Augustus in 28 years BC, there are Roman emperors that are actually only known from their coins, like this guy here. And this guy on here, but proper emperors that ruled over the whole of the Roman Empire, it said. There's a guy who's mentioned at the bottom here, and he comes into play around 260 odd. He's known as Dominatanus, and we've only found, I think we found 2 coins now. One was found not so long ago, and the one referred to in this book here says of Dominatanus. This usurper is not mentioned by any of the historians of the period, just like this guy, Carausius II. His existence is known only from a single coin found in France, from Cléon, in 1900, bearing the obverse inscription Imp C Domitianus PF Augustus, which means the Emperor Caesar Domitianus Augustus. It is possible that he may be the same Domitianus who commanded the army which defeated Macroni in AD 261. Macroni. The style of his coin is obviously of Gallic influence. Domitianus might have made a momentary grasp at power in the troubled period following the assassination of the Roman Emperor Postumus in 268. So we do. It's rather interesting that we've got coins. There are 1 or 2 other coins as well that are here. And Carausius II isn't even in this list in the book. He's not even mentioned in here, which is quite strange. But the one that is actually mentioned is Constantius II, who's actually mentioned on this coin as the actual emperor that's actually ruling over the empire at that time. And Constantius II actually reigned for just over 24 years. And this guy was usurper for about 4 years. So I wanted to put this guy into some kind of history. So fact or fiction, what we know about this individual is actually from coins that are around, right? And he wasn't legitimate, but basically, one historian says about Carausius II. He says the following. So here we go. The years are 354, 358. In the period of Constantius II, undisputed rule over the whole empire, and to show in short that Carausius II was not and could not have been in any sense a colleague of the legitimate emperor, much less, as he has recently been suggested, the ruler of a wide tract of southern Britain. So in other words, Karl-james II might have actually not ruled over the whole of Britain either. So that's rather interesting. So we get these strange anomalies in history, but these strange anomalies in history are very important because the coins tell us a bit of information that's not written down in the history. So that's an important point. So what I want us to do now is go on to something completely different, right? I just thought, right, let's just blow that one out of the water, right? And let's do something else. So we'll move on from this beautiful coin. And I know Bill will be very wary of this next subject. Emperor Valerian. There is the Emperor Valerian being captured. Now, what am I talking about? Who is Valerian? Where does he come into the throw of things? What's this? Well, I mentioned Valerian, right? So you know about the Valerian plant? Yeah, we'll look at that one. So the Valerian herb, as it were. Now, the Emperor Valerian, rather intriguing, this guy. And he is seen portrayed on the left-hand side of the image. So you've got the great emperor here, the other emperor. Now, the other emperor is in fact Shapur I, a Persian emperor. And this guy, Valerian, is actually the Roman emperor. And the Roman emperor is this guy here. And we believe, so here we go. Let's get my little writing things in here. Hang on a minute. So there we go. There's the great Shapur, and there's the great Roman emperor Valerian. And this is basically one of Valerian's soldiers saying, look, you know, it's over, right? You know, we're not going to fight you anymore. But Valerian was taken as prisoner. Now, I can remember talking about this in, and Dell's got some Valerian plant there. And Dell, it's a herb. And you got the
Yes,
unusual.
I know. I brew it up to help me sleep.
The interesting, really, actually, let's take a little bit of a distraction because we know you want to talk about it. So tell us a bit more about the Valerian there. Well, what does it mean to you, and what does it do to you?
Right. This is red valerian.
Yes.
It's basically a weed.
Yes.
Or considered as.
Considered as.
It grows everywhere in South Wales. You know, I don't know where it's come from originally, but maybe it came across with the Romans.
This is what we're going to talk about. Yes.
Oh, lovely. But for me, because I know a little bit about herbs and stuff, I can brew the flowers, the leaves, grind up the roots, and make a tincture.
A what?
A tincture. Well,
what's that?
A tea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because there's a difference between tea and tinctures.
Never heard of it. Go on.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Tea is from India, China, and those places, from the tea plant. But tinctures are things that are brewed from herbs and other stuff.
Oh.
So, because I know it's got, not narcotic, but it helps with calming. A bit like, what do you call it? Chamomile.
Right, yeah.
But a bit more potent. And
right.
it's in a lot of herbal stuff for helping people to sleep. It's also in a lot of medication to help people sleep. So because it's rife around me, I have a tea of it every night. It's probably why I'm barking.
Oh my God, right, Richard, we need to do, when we're going at the studio and Barry, we need to sort of, experiment with a little bit of this. Oh, wicked. Thanks for that, Del. Anyway.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyway, thank Del. That was really good. Really, really interesting stuff. So, right. So the Emperor Valerian, really interesting figure. He goes to the Middle East, and he reigns from 253 to 260 years AD. It's believed that because he persecuted Christians, that God had his vengeance. And this emperor, this Roman emperor, was captured by Shapur I after the Battle of Edessa. Valerian becoming the first Roman emperor to be captured as a prisoner of war, causing shock and instability throughout the Roman world. So you can imagine this is in the 260s. The 260s become a massive period of instability. And back to my little book of coins, right? Back to my little book of coins. Now, it is to be said that after the death of this Valerian, there are quite a number of emperors reigning, right? So if we go between AD 260, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 Roman emperors before the year 282. So in a period of 20, within a period of 20 years, there's at least 10 Roman emperors that we know about. Right, until there's some stability within the reign of Probus. And then you get into that really weird period, and we think of Carausius, and we think of Electus. So a massive shockwave was put through the Roman Empire. So the unprecedented event and the unknown fate of the captured emperor generated a variety of different reactions and new narratives about the Roman Empire in its diverse contexts. So in other words, the Roman Empire could be properly defeated. Forget about Teutoburg Forest. This is actually an emperor that has actually been captured. Now, he's known for his persecutions of the Christians that we don't actually talk about. Let's just mention a little bit about the persecutions of the Christians. We know that there's massive persecutions under Diocletian in the 300s, right, of the Christians. Right, Christianity is now still an up and growing religion. It's going to be at least 80 years before it's taken seriously by the Roman Empire properly, under the reign of Constantine the Great, who proclaims himself a Christian on his deathbed in the year 337. So, while fighting the Persians, Valerian sent messages to the Senate, ordering that firm steps to be taken against Christians. The first sent in 257, okay, this 257 is 3 years before his capture, commanded Christian clergy to perform sacrifices to Roman gods or face banishment. So in other words, Christians had to, make sacrifices to Roman gods. The second letter, the following year, ordered the execution of Christian leaders. So in other words, 1 minute he's telling the Senate that Christian clergy can be Christian clergy, but they've got to undertake sacrifices to the Roman gods. The next year he sends another letter to say that Christian leaders need to be executed, right? Which is interesting. It also required Christian senators to perform acts of worship to the Roman gods or lose their titles and property, and directed that they be executed if they continued to refuse. So in other words, it's a bit of a sort of, Christian leaders should be executed, but Christian senators can remain senators. They're not to be executed as long as they worship Roman gods. So this is how screwed up the persecution of Christians is. It also decreed that most people who are most people should see that the state needs to obtain taxes for these continued wars. Now, what we do know about Valerian is down to some accounts given to us by the Roman writer Eutropius, who's writing 100 years later. But before we can talk about Valerian himself and what exactly happened to Valerian, what we need to do is we need to look at this battle that Valerian faced, this great king of all kings, Shapur I, in 260. Now, this is quite a statement to make, and you could, as such, the battle is generally viewed as one of the worst military disasters in history. Well, I think we can trump that very recently, that a whole country can be conquered by a group of gun-wielding people within a week. So, okay, but then again, I've got my own view on that. So we don't want to talk about the fact that it's likely that we've been lied to about the Afghanistan army ever existing in the first place. But if we want to say that the Afghan army did exist, which I don't believe it really did, this battle in 260 ranks up there with some of the world's greatest military defeats ever. Now, what basically happened, what led to this, is that the great empire of the Persians had been constantly at war with the Romans. There was always fighting between the Romans and the East. That's very interesting. And the reason why that point is very, very interesting is think about what's happening today. Forget about Afghanistan. Let's just put that over there. Just forget my thoughts. I remember saying this when we did this as a class, and when we looked at actually Valerian as part of a lecture.
Don't have to ask.
What was that? Del, I had to mute you then. I believe that the idea of East and West was enshrined by this constant war between Rome and the Parthians, the Persians, those people of the East. And what I mean by that is because there's always war in between people in the West and the East, the Romans, and then if we look at this Battle of Edessa between Shapur I and his great Persian Empire, right? I believe that idea of East and West goes back to this point. And also, this division of attitudes between the East and the West also comes into those two big religions, Christianity and Islam. And I remember reading not so long ago, if Christianity hadn't have existed, Islam would have never existed either. I think that's a very, very interesting point. And if Christianity hadn't existed, then we may not have had this idea of East and West. So all of this is really important. So this moment in history in 260 is really, really important. The Romans were continually at the edge. They were really at the edge of trying to deal with the Persians. Now, Valerian, it said, led an army that was endemic with plague against the Persians. So in other words, he's leading an army where the soldiers are actually just dropping as they're marching along. He hasn't got a fit, healthy army. Whereas Shapur did have a very fit, healthy army. It's said that the empire of the Persians, known as the Sassanid Empire, which we've also mentioned as well in the past, Valerian's army of 70,000 was not only out-healthed, it was probably outmatched in abilities to be able to deal with the conditions that the Shapur's army were able to be able to deal with. It was probably not very well supplied, and it very much came a cropper. So Valerian met the Persian army, which was commanded by the Persian emperor himself, Shapur I, with units from almost every part of the Roman Empire, together with Germanic allies, and was thoroughly defeated and captured with his entire army. So in other words, his entire army, after a little time of fighting, was captured. So can you imagine? It's a bit like the British Army surrendering at Singapore in the Second World War, 84,000 of them. And when lots of them felt that they could have fought on, and they could have done a lot of damage to the Japanese. But the fact of the matter is, this Roman army was not only defeated, most of its men didn't fight either, because they were probably too ill to fight. So the emperor was actually captured himself, and the prisoners included, according to Shapur's claims, many other high-ranking officials. And it has also been claimed that Shapur went back on his word by having the emperor seized after agreeing to truce negotiations. So in other words, the emperor went out to talk to Shapur, and Shapur basically captured him, took him prisoner straight away. And that basically led to the complete collapse of the Roman army. Now, there are varying accounts to Valerian's fate following his capture at the hands of Shapur. So let's have a little look at some of the other images. There is the Roman Emperor Valerian. He was actually in his 60s as well. So, you know, I know generals in our modern army can be in their 60s, which is great. But this guy's got all the stress and the hassle of the Roman Empire, and he's leading an army in his 60s. So that's very interesting, that image, Valerian, Emperor Valerian. And there is the great Shapur entering the back of the horse. So why have we got Valerian there? What's this about? What does this mean? Right? We're gonna discuss what this means in a moment. Now, there's an intaglio, a ring setting, right? And this intaglio ring setting shows the great Shapur on the right with the Valerian on the left. And I think what it's doing is basically saying, now I'm holding your hand. I have now got power over you. I have now got power. Whether Valerian's got this sword or not doesn't matter. I've captured you. You are now my captive. This is what this intaglio is saying. Yeah? So there's our Valerian plant. Quite a tribute to this man. So anyway, looking at this, trying to get to grips with what's going on. So I got two sets of accounts that tell us about Valerian. Do I go with the ones on the left, or do I go with the ones on the right? Do you know what? I'm going to do both. Shapur sent Valerian and some of his army to the city of Bishapur. That's one account, where they lived in relatively good conditions. Shapur used the remaining soldiers in engineering and development plans, as the Romans were skilled tradesmen and artisans. It's also said that a great dam was actually built, associated with the ancient Sassanid city of Susa. That's one account of what happened to Valerian. But I was going to say at the end of this, it's all lies, lies, and lies. So there's another account of what happened to Valerian. Another source that discusses what happened to Valerian was that Shapur humiliated Valerian, using the former emperor as a human stepping stool. That's where that image comes from. While mounting his horse, he was reportedly kept in a cage and was humiliated for the Persian emperor's pleasure, according to Aurelius Victor. Upon his death, Valerian's body was allegedly skinned and stuffed, depending on which account, with manure or straw, to produce a trophy of Roman submission preserved in a Persian temple. However, there are also accounts that stipulate he was treated with respect, as the first account, and that allegations of torture may have been fabricated by Christian historians to show the perils that befell persecutors of Christianity. So in other words, what we're saying is that Valerian was a persecutor of Christianity. It was justified to show that the Sassanids, the Persians, Shapur I, had in fact made the emperor suffer because of his persecutions against Christianity. The Persians wouldn't have actually cared, to be honest with you. Another account as well. Valerian's capture, Shapur took the city of Caesarea and deported some 400,000 of its citizens to southern provinces of the Sassanid Empire. He then raided another Roman city, Cilicia, but he was finally repulsed by a Roman force, which was led by a future Roman emperor known as Macrinus. Valerian's defeat at Edessa became the catalyst for a series of revolts. As we've already said, a temporary fragmentation of the Roman Empire, problems in Britain, problems on the Danube frontier, and things didn't really go well for quite some time. So that's a nice little bit about Valerian, but can we give any more detail about Valerian's fate? Now, this is really, really interesting. So there's this writer, Eutropius, writing about the ignominy of the great Valerian going into slavery. And Valerian offered Shapur a huge ransom for his release, but Valerian was never ever released. What we also see is Shapur was said to have forced Valerian to swallow molten gold. The other version of his death is almost the same, but it says that Valerian was killed by being flayed alive, and then had Valerian skinned and his skin stuffed with straw, preserved as a trophy in a Persian temple. We know about that one. It was further alleged that it was only after a later Persian defeat against Rome that his skin was given a cremation and burial. The captivity and death of Valerian has been frequently debated by historians. So what we do have is this idea that Roman engineers were actually used in building schemes across the Sassanid Empire of the Empire of Shapur. It's also alleged that it could be that Valerian really didn't survive long, and most of what we've mentioned about Valerian could actually be more fiction than fact. But then again, that's history and archaeology. So the next thing I want to do is actually look a little bit at a plant that we mentioned earlier on. So Valerian, there it is. Now, Dell's got the pink Valerian, right? And to be honest with you, if you're looking on the internet, that's the red Valerian, not the pink Valerian. Images of pink Valerian are not actually easy to come by, right? So Dell's actually got the real Valerian in front of him, right? So Dell, what you should do, you should make that into tea, and you should make everybody in the Bridgen class drink it, including Bill. So Valerian is a perennial flowering plant native to Europe and Asia. In the summer, when the mature plant may have a height of over 1.5 meters, and it usually grows around walls. Right? Now, I'm just going to say something about this myself, that it can grow. Richard will know this. When Richard's wandered around dodgy lanes in Barry, and I've wandered around dodgy lanes in Barry, is it not wrong of me to say, Richard, that Valerian grows bloody everywhere and it's that pink stuff?
Yeah, it is pretty. Well, building sites where the ground's been bulldozed or leveled.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Valerian, and there's a lot of that in Barry, I've got to be honest with you. Valerian has been used as a medicinal herb since at least the time of ancient Greece and Rome. Hippocrates, I can never say that one, describes its properties, and Galens, the Roman physician, said it was a remedy for insomnia back in the 160s. In medieval Sweden, it was sometimes placed in the wedding clothes of the groom to ward off the envy of the elves. So there you go, Dal. Don't go into the bushes. In John Gerald's Herbal, first published in 1597, states that his contemporaries found Valerian excellent for those burdened. and for such as be troubled with croup and other like convulsions, and also for those that are bruised with falls. He says that the dried root was valued as a medicine by the poor in the north of England and the south of Scotland, so that no broth or pottage or physical meat be worth anything if valerian be not there. So basically it's added to everything. And then finally, about valerian, away from the Roman thing, Valerian, the botanist, Nicholas Culpeper, thought the plant was under the influence of mercury and therefore has a warming faculty. He recommended both herb and root, as Dell has. The root boiled with licorice and ransons and aniseed is good for those troubled with cough. Also, it is of special value against the plague. Well, it's got to be. It needs to be drunk, and the root smelled. The green herb being bruised and applied to the head, taken away pain and pricking thereof. So valerian is a good old roundup of being a cue for lots of things. So there's lots of things about valerian extract and so on, which I'm sure Dell's been pretty good at doing today. So what I want us to do now is we've put the link between an unknown Roman emperor into being an emperor that disappears because Shapur at the Battle of Edessa. And then, folks, what we then do is that we've looked at the plant valerian, and then we're going to go into North Africa. So that's where we're going to go next. And this is where we are. We're going to go, we're not going to show too many images. We're going to go to Volubilis. Now, you look at this plan, you've all heard of Carthage, and no doubt you've heard of the massive city of Leptis Magna. You may have heard of Cyrene, and you may have heard of Timgad, but maybe not of Volubilis, which is actually in Morocco. Volubilis. Now, that's a Roman city. Now, interestingly enough, you're looking at this and thinking, I didn't know there were any Roman remains in Morocco. Yes, there are. In fact, if I was to draw a line on this, which I'm going to do, and I just do a little bit of a correction. The Roman Empire was probably following a line like this, all the way like this, and down something like this. And the Romans didn't claim any of this area, right? Because it was just nothing but sand. Now, if the Romans were able to get as far as Niger and Chad and Mali and Mauritania, I'm sure that would have increased the size of the Roman Empire quite considerably. But it didn't actually get to that line. This is basically the Roman Empire. Basically, the Roman Empire followed the coast, and they were always being attacked by Berber tribes of North Africa. So this is what we're going to have a little look at. I'm just going to give a few facts and figures, and then we'll call it a day until next week. So, there's somebody's put some points on there. Look at my picture, Valerian. I've used and never got COVID. Fair enough. Del, is that a cure for COVID? Why did we have to have those injections? Which I haven't had anyway. Right. So where are we now? Right. Volubilis. That's where we're going to go. But what we're going to do, I'm going to leave that map on there for a moment. Right. We're going to get rid of those lines. Good. Get rid of those lines. We're going to see what we can find. We're going to see what we can see. Right. Here we go. Hang on. That there. Volubilis. Now, North Africa Roman remains are, I would say, underestimated. Right? Very, very underestimated. Because when we think about the Roman Empire, okay, let's sit down a minute. Let's do a bit of a mastermind, right? Karl, name 3 most important provinces of the Roman Empire. Okay, Caesarea. I would go with Greece, and I go with Hispania. Spain. Okay. But what about Egypt? Oh, yeah, well...
Libya.
Oh, okay! But the point is, the ones that I've mentioned are the ones that we always talk about. We talk about Spain. We talk about Caesarea. We talk about the Middle East. That sort of... We just done it when we looked at Valerian. We talk about Greece and obviously Rome itself, and maybe chucking Gaul. Egypt, and then you might chuck in Libya somewhere in that list, Del. Yeah? But I think, Germanicus, right? The Roman bits of Germany that the Romans conquered. But you don't really talk about North Africa as part of the Roman world. You don't talk about Morocco. And you don't talk about Egypt as being part of the Roman world because...
Mauritania and Lusitania.
All right, stop showing off. But the point is, you don't think about Egypt as being part of the Roman Empire because it's like Egypt. But Egypt supplied the grain for the Roman Empire. So we go on to Mauritania, Del, and we go to Libya, and we go to modern-day Tunisia. North Africa is famous for its bustling souks, nomadic ties, and the expanse of the Sahara. Yet it is also massively rich in the Roman legacy. In fact, lots of the very, very best Roman remains are to be actually found in Africa. These incredibly well-preserved remnants of an empire dot the rugged and sweeping landscapes from Morocco to Egypt in stunning and even remote locations. Although the fall of the Roman Empire occurred more than a millennium ago, over 1,000 years ago, well over 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, the grandeur of its exquisite and ingenious architecture has never failed to sustain the intrigue for this timeless civilization. And if I should ever find the only photograph my granddad gave me when he served for the RAF in North Africa in the Second World War, it's an image of the amphitheatre at Carthage. No, Tunisia. Right, so the next image that we're going to actually look at is this site, Volubilis. It's Volubilis. And look at those remains. Don't they look absolutely stunning for Volubilis? And look at that mosaic, an absolutely stunning mosaic. The one that stands out, the thing that stands out most is that there's these little red tiles here. I don't know why that's there. I think that's probably indicating what the colour may have originally looked like. I'm not sure. Volubilis. Now, let's just mention this place, Volubilis, this legendary place, Volubilis, in modern-day Morocco. One of Morocco's most must-see sites from the Roman era is Volubilis. This former administrative city of the Roman province of Mauritania, Tingitana, boasted its prosperity through the fruitful production of olive oil, and the buildings dedicated to this successful profession still exists, as one is to be seen in front of us. This ancient outpost remained occupied well after the Romans had left, but it was in the 1700s that King Ismail ibn Sharif had many of the structures in Volubilis torn down for use towards building his posh residence. Oh my God. So most of the city was still standing until the 1700s, and this frigging bastard pulled it all down to build his palace. Despite this, the king's brazenness and the passing of time, Volubilis continues to display its richness. Lots of buildings still stand there today. The basilica that you'll see in front of us, dating from the 300s, the soaring columns of the Capitoline Temple and the Arch of Caracalla are prominent features of this ancient skyline. The cherished pride of Volubilis has 30 exquisite mosaics which cover the floors in the site's former residences. So obviously, these look at that there. Wow. Ooh. That is really chunky. And then look at one of these wonderful, beautiful mosaics. So you've got 30 beautiful mosaics like this in some of the buildings that have actually been excavated. So So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave some things to the imagination today. But we cannot not go to Tunisia. That's where we're going to go. We don't need to go to Egypt. But what we do say, and what I'm going to do is just get my little notes up on the screen, if I may. Yeah, let's have a look. First of all, let's have a little look at Algeria a minute. Let's sort of go back and sort of point at that in there. So Tapasa, Timgad, and Jamila. So these three sites in Algeria. Again, the only thing you think about Algeria is the war in the 1950s and the 1960s between the French and the Algerians. What else do we know about Algeria? Not a lot. So I really don't know. It's Islamic. That'll do. Algeria is set in the undulating hills of in the north of Africa, and there's a wonderful city called Jamila, formerly known in the ancient world as Kokul, is one of the country's greatest treasures from the days of the Roman Empire. In the early stages of the Roman Empire, it had a garrison to keep the success of agriculture in the region in check. Oh, so they actually provided grain for Rome as well. Brilliant. As a result of the city's growth, development expanded beyond the city walls and included construction of 2 forums and a theatre to seat over 3,000 people. However, by the mid-400s, Jamila had started to be deserted. It aged gracefully with time, and many of its ruins, such as the visible pipes that carried water to the grand baths, have held up extraordinarily well. Excavations in 1909, 1957, and we'll just show you a bit of a mosaic image in a moment. Lots of caches of artifacts. And this mosaic now, which is the abduction of Europe by Jupiter. It's quite ironic, really. So let's just sort of show this one. Let's just sort of change the screen and new share. There you go. When I say irony, isn't lost on any of us when we think about it said the abduction of Europe by Jupiter, and you could think about the abduction of Britain by Europe, that type of thing, if you want to play around with that there. So that's one of the absolutely beautiful mosaics you can actually find at the site. And there it is. And then finally, if we sort of end on this Tunisia. Now, I always think about this still standing. This hasn't been reconstructed. This still standing structure in front of us. For a stroll down Roman history lane, Doga in Tunisia. Although its collection of priceless mosaics and statues are on display in the Tunisian Museum, this ancient administrative centre certainly captivates visitors with a venerable ensemble of not only its Roman past, but of its Nubian and Punic and Byzantine influences. So look at that beautiful building there, absolutely beautiful. That's the one that I think of. The Doga's 12 temples, the capital, this is known as the capital. There you go. It was originally constructed in 166 AD, and Rome was dedicated this grand structure to the Capitoline Triad, Jupiter, king of the gods, and Juno and Minerva. Each marble statue had its individual niches, which remain visible in the capital today. Amazing. However, only portions of the imposing statues of Jupiter survived the ages, while the other two didn't. So obviously we've got the little niches. And one other feature to highlight in this ancient city is its theatre, originally built to accommodate an audience of 3,500 people. Look this up. Dating back to the 100s, a seat from this lofty perch also provides a panorama of the fertile valley fields below. So this overlooked a great fertile landscape. Again, another Tunisia being one of those bread baskets of the Roman world. And again, we mentioned Leptis Magna the other week. It's there. It was part of the Roman world. As a result, Julius Caesar happily imposed a yearly tax of £3 million of olive oil on the coastal city in the year 46 years BC. Recognition for many of the vestiges of Leptis Magna goes to Septimus Severus, dating to 210s. There you go. who was here and became a Roman emperor in the year 193. Ambitious construction project, a 12-mile long aqueduct, various baths, harbour. Severus oversaw the beginning of the city and its new forum. It was his son Caracalla that completed it and inaugurated it 5 years later. In honour of the native son who became a ruler of Rome, the citizens of Leftnus Magna constructed the Severian arch, which is what we're seeing in front of us today, which still stands there today. Amazing that it still stands. It's there. A little bit of restoration, but it's still there today. And look at that beautiful theatre at Leftnus Magna. It's one of very few that still has the great stage there as the backdrop. Still there. The stage's soaring columns and the cobalt blue Mediterranean in the background have elevated Leftnus Magna to be one of North Africa's celebrated icons of ancient Roman architecture. We were going to mention, but we've run out of time, basically ancient Egypt. And ancient Egypt was one of the last vestiges of the Roman world. And look at that little bit of a theatre there, which would have had a semicircular roof over it as well. I'm still trying to work out how you could accommodate 800 people there, but give it a go. It wouldn't have really lasted open under social distancing within COVID, would it? So on that note, what we're going to do, we're going to, it's saying that this was actually discovered by chance during the excavation process for the government buildings in the 1960s. Very interesting there. Little bit of an Odeon there, a little bit of a theatre. So what we're going to do, we're going to call that a day. Are there any questions, Del?
No, but thank you for letting me go, because I would have wet myself otherwise, and I had to go quick. I did send you a message to say where I went.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, I had to disappear quick.
But Bill just goes and gets on with it, don't you, Bill?
Indeed. What else is there to do?
Oh yes, he's got a pan under his table.
Well, he probably has.
Absolutely loved. Really enjoyed that, Carl. It was absolutely fabulous, and you know, I've got my bit of medieval tile.
Good. Make sure you take it back.
I will do, and I'll swap it for a better one.
All right, then we won't say any more about that. Bill!
Yeah, a couple of things.
Go on, Bill. Go on, Bill.
We often debated the reasons of the decline of the Roman Empire, but you mentioned Egypt as one of the grain baskets, providing supplies to the empire. But I would imagine most, if not all, of the countries fringing the North African coast under the control of the Romans would have provided grain as well.
Yes,
and
they
maybe any disruption or local uprisings, disruption in the supply of grain, it was a factor for the decline.
Would have been catastrophic for Rome, because Rome had a population of 1 million people. Trying to keep those million people actually fed every day would have been an absolute nightmare.
But there's the second point. You mentioned there were 10 emperors within 20 years, around the 260s, etc.
Yes.
So that means on average a 2-year interregnum between emperors.
Yes.
So those periods must have been quite unstable, and I would guess the emperor of the time, that the top man or something, a usurper, and he must have had the year of the Roman army, because if you've got the Roman army behind you, you can do what you want to.
This was the big fear. Yeah, exactly.
Or corruption, politics, all came into it, you know. And it's interesting that Valerian's son, Galenius, actually took over from Valerian after his demise as well. So he must have been one of the power brokers, operating from Rome, presumably, or anywhere else, you know. But it's an area of great debate, I think, isn't it? The decline of the emperors and why everything became so unstable, and all the different factors which went into the melting pot to actually lead to the eventual decline. Not just invasion from other tribal groups in Europe and the Far East, the Middle East, etc. So yeah, you can go on debating the reasons, can't you? But it's fascinating how many there are, But you're quite right. You mentioned Carausius. In my book of Roman emperors, yeah, guess what? He's not mentioned at all.
He's not mentioned at all. He's not mentioned. No.
Quite comprehensive.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
No, thanks for that, Carl. Always interesting, of course, always.
More Romans next week, and as long as Dal tells us if he's going to the loo or not, and then finally Richard, before we finished, Richard.
Oh, really interesting. I say it's quite a complicated sort of with the Romans. You tend to in school you're taught that they're sort of really all together, and and they're not. It's just totally because you're getting like the army would build up an army in the east, they build up an army in the west, and they virtually fight each other.
Yeah.
Or the winner then would be off to Rome and try and overthrow the government in Rome. And
this is the thing. There's all that controversy continually. So yeah. So yeah, as I always say, the only thing that defeated Rome eventually was Rome itself.
Yeah.
Because I'll just chuck away this fact, and maybe actually, I think to be fair, I think next week we should look at the fall of Rome, because if we look at, for example, if I do my counting correct here, between the year between around 400 to the end of Rome in the West, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 Roman emperors in the space of 76 years.
That says everything about the instability of the empire then, doesn't it?
Massively unstable. And just this one point. I call him Odessa, okay? Odvovacar. Odvacar. He was actually a Roman general. He captured Rome from the last Roman emperor Augustus and said, "Enough is enough. That's the end of Rome," and he closed the book. It was actually he was actually a mercenary Roman general that marched on his own paymasters as a Roman. And that's basically what happened. On that note, we will call it a day. If there's no other questions from Richard and Bill, I will get that email to you tonight, Bill, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay then. Okay. Yeah.
Bye-bye time.
Okay. Bye-bye, Richard and Bill. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. Cheers, Rich. Cheers, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All the best.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers,
Bye-bye. Cheers, lovely. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. If whoever was watching on YouTube, and I do believe there was somebody who probably watched the whole thing. I'll double check. Well, somebody was with us for a while. Anyway, thank you very, very much for watching on YouTube. I am off and I am massively drained now, so I'm going to call it a day. Off the old YouTube. Do, 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 do. Look at my picture, Valerian. I've used and never got COVID. Messages. Are we nearly done? I'm holding my PP tube, need to run. Thank you, very good, very interesting, need to run. Okay, take care. Don't ask. And we'll call it a day. And, oh no.